All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Gridiron Gurus podcast. Today, we're going to be looking at three things the Buffalo Bills need to accomplish this offseason to remain in contention for a Super Bowl after a disappointing loss to the Denver Broncos in the divisional round in a game where Josh Allen had 4 turnovers. The defense actually played quite well. It was one of the better games they've had in the past couple of weeks, but it wasn't enough as Allen was not able to make enough plays. Bo Nix was able to outduel him to punch their ticket to the AFC Championship game. And now we're going to look at three things the Bills need to accomplish to remain in the hunt. They have a lot of bad contracts on the books. This is a team that does not have a lot of cap space to work with. Looking at Dawson Knox, for example, as your backup tight end at 30 years old, $18.6 million cap hit. Josh Palmer sitting at nearly $12 million after a 300-yard season. He was not a great free agent acquisition. Curtis Samuel almost has a $10 million cap hit, an aging veteran of the game who really doesn't do a whole lot for the Bills, really for anybody nowadays. So these are just not some good contracts that the Bills have, and it's something they're going to have to overcome in terms of disposing of them or potentially, working through the draft. But we also want to have some fun in free agency, go find some immediate upgrades that are going to help this run defense. And that's the thing first thing we're going to look at. Some guys in free agency, then move some guys to the draft that could be impactful as well. Starting with Alex Anzalone, this is a physical veteran backer, was drafted back in 2017 out of Florida. Played sparingly for the Saints over the first 4 years. Went to Detroit in 2021 in his first year of consistent starting action. He was awful. One of the worst defenders on that team for the Lions. They stayed true to him. They saw the raw prospectness in him, and they allowed him to develop as he ended up being the starter for the next 4 years. 2023 was a good season for him, 114 tackles. Wasn't as polished as a run defender as he has been the last 2 years, but also his efficiency as a tackler has also jumped up significantly. Only 14 combined missed tackles over the last 2 years. And this is a guy who's been good against the run. He's really filled in for the Lions and been an alpha in that defense. This is a guy you could probably get for a bargain because most likely that's what the Bills are going to have to do is go find some guys that are going to, not command as much money as the higher end commodities. But this is a player who's definitely sprung in a lot of consistency over the past 4 years as a starter for the Lions. I'm not sure if they're going to want to let him go, but I also think he's going to want to test the open market a little bit and see how much he can bring in. I think about 3 year, $24 million is something. It's going to be in the range for Anzalone. Maybe that's a bit of an overpayment for the Bills. But this is a guy I think can definitely come in and be an immediate upgrade for them at the linebacking position. Matt Milano has not been the same over the last couple of years. He's been battling with a lot of injuries. He's really struggled to stay on the field. Likely to not be re-signed by this group. Terrell Bernard this past season was also vastly inconsistent, was just a horrendously inconsistent tackler. Shaq Thompson was probably their best linebacker at times for them, but this is a guy who's been around a long time, about 32 years of age. Pretty young considering he's been in the league since 2015, but I think his best days are certainly behind him, and he's not going to be a full-time starter in the middle for this defense. And then Dorian Williams, a younger cat, I think he's going to remain in the fold after his third year. This is the most leash he had. I thought he played well at times. It wasn't good enough, but he's still going to remain there. But in terms of the other three guys, it's probably something you're going to want to look to free agency to fill. And I also think another guy, Cole Holcomb. This is a player who's kind of a forgotten guy for the Steelers. He's been solid when he was on the field. Only saw 200 snaps this past year for Pitt. Was gradually eased back and after missing 2024 with a knee injury. This guy was a solid contributor for the Steelers, 6'1", 240. His run defense throughout his entire career has been really respectable. That's why he's still in the league even after a bad injury. First 4 years he was with Washington. He was a consistent player for them. Saw 400 plus snaps in all of those years. 342 career tackles. This is a guy who's also quite efficient when it comes to making tackles in the box. And overall, just his positioning against the run is something the Bills need to look for. Guys who can fire downhill into gaps at a more effective rate. Holcomb is a guy that, again, is kind of forgotten. I think you can get at a cheaper price, but somebody that should be added to this linebacking group and given an opportunity as a full-time starter. I really think that he can grow. Still a young cat at 29 years of age. Being in this conference, he's definitely seen the Bills plenty of times. The past couple of years has been tough for him, right? Not being able to see a field a whole lot. 2 year, $13.5 million. I think you could probably even get him for cheaper depending on how many suitors he potentially has. But I think this is a good opportunity for Cole, and I think it would be for the Bills as well because playing time will be up for grabs in the middle of this defense. He's a guy that did not play a whole lot last year. And again, I think you can continue to ease him in there and, put him on a long leash and see what you can accomplish if he's a full-time starter. So I think Cole Holcomb's not a bad idea. Maybe, 13, $14 million is a tad overpayment, but this is a player who has really proven his worth in this league over the past couple of seasons. And I think that he's definitely going to be someone that can compete somewhere for a starting role and potentially working his way into being one of the higher paid linebackers in the NFL. Looking at another guy up front, defensive end Joseph Asai. They don't just need run stopping help. They need a player who can also rush the passer at a more consistent level. Now, this is a guy who has a lot of upside still after 4 years with Cincinnati. The Bengals, they themselves are in cap problems. They also don't have a lot of great pass rushing or run defense help, so it's probably a player they don't want to see go, but they might be looking to bargains themselves when it comes to drafting players they can get on cheaper contracts. Aside with his upside after a great season, is likely going to command a little bit more money. I'm looking at maybe a 2-year, $30 million deal. Baby steps in his game. That's what he's been doing in terms of improvement. He's an athletic freak, though. A lot of explosiveness from him, capable of dropping into coverage on occasion and covering his zone as a tackler or just a defender against the pass. I think this was probably his best career season, though. Had 29 hurries, 5 sacks in each of the past 2 seasons. Hasn't been the most efficient tackler by any means, and his run defense has been very sporadic. But again, that explosiveness is something the Bills are lacking, and it's a guy that can create havoc, that potentially, be physical and create those run lane defense opportunities for those linebackers to free flow a little bit more, and his run stopping was a big part of his game this past season. He was much improved in that area. Still needs to find consistency, right? But that can go for really anybody in the league. But more often than not, he was an impactful player against the run. I think Joseph Asai is an underrated player that can also go get. But a guy who's only played 4 years in the league, who is seemingly getting better on a week-to-week basis. He's going to have a lot of guys, I think, calling his phone for his services, and I think the Bills can definitely offer a compelling package. So I think Joseph Asai is somebody they should look at. Looking at 2 guys in the draft, if you want to go to defensive tackle, I think Christian Miller from Georgia, and then Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. Miller, this guy's 6'4", 310, good quickness, two-gap run defender with his strength. This is a guy who definitely doesn't have as much pass rushing consistency. He really didn't show off much at Georgia, but his anticipation, along with just being a well-filled out frame this far in his career with some nice twitch, is definitely making Christian Miller compelling. And he was a great run stopper for Georgia. I think Lee Hunter also has very similar attributes. This is a guy who can stack and shed and just get off opposing linemen. I like his ability to really throttle things on the interior, not just as a run stopper, but as a pass rusher as well. He also has pretty ideal size. This is a player with a lot of mass to him. At Texas Tech at 6'4", 315, and his motor was really impressive. I think the lateral movement was pretty good, and I think he can be a great run defender on those early downs. Somebody to come in right away as a first-round prospect and make things happen. Him and Miller would be 2 guys the Bills should look to because, again, the defensive line was a big struggle as well. If they can find some more guys that can create havoc, that'd be impactful. Ed Oliver this year, this is a guy that was banged up all year long, and I really felt like he could have taken his game to another level. We just have not really seen it from Ed Oliver. At Houston, this guy was projected to come into the league and just be a next Aaron Donald type, and he's just never really shown it. And he was not able to play much this year, so the defensive tackle room definitely needs some fresh faces in there. And Oliver, 24 and 23 was just not that good of a run defender, quite frankly. So if he can have some help alongside him, maybe they can free him up to see some of his better football. But I just don't think overall Oliver is ever going to really be an elite player at the position. So we need to go younger. And I think those 5 names right there would be nice additions to get things started for the Bills off season. Next, what do they need to do? Number 2, sign Juwan Jennings and or Tutu Atwell. For the Bills, this is a group that needs an alpha wide receiver one. Keon Coleman's not really emerged as the perennial playmaker for this group. He could be a quality Z pass catcher, I think, as a number 2 option. Still has nice athletic ability, good size and speed, has some nice plays in the playoffs. But the X spot is still going to be in need of a big-time playmaker, and Juwan Jennings is probably going to command about $20 million a year, a team that needs cap. They don't have a whole lot, but if you're able to create some, going out and getting Jennings is very ideal. This is a guy who can win at a variety of different areas on the field, but more importantly, he's just a physical guy that can win tough contested catches. Josh Allen is an incredible tight window thrower. His ability to really throttle things in there with accuracy, that's great, right? I mean, that makes him one of the top quarterbacks in the league, but they just don't have many receivers that can win in those situations. Jennings doesn't have much yak, and that's something that's been a problem for Buffalo. They don't have a lot of explosiveness in this pass game, so maybe it's not worthwhile in terms of an investment because they do need some explosiveness. But that's where Tutu Atwell comes to mind, because in free agency there's not too many guys you can point to as strong yards after catch producers. I think in the draft, there's plenty of guys you could potentially target, but in terms of immediate upgrades right now, I think Jennings can help solve some problems just to being a veteran in the league, somebody that you can typically find with a lot of targets. His production hasn't exactly screamed somebody that maybe would be getting $20 million, but I definitely think this is a very good player. And in an offense like this, it's a run first offense, but they have a lot of play action and they have a quarterback who's great at being a high volume thrower of the football with a lot of accuracy. I think Jennings can step up and be the guy that helped them out because they just don't have a whole lot of separation from this wide receiver group. It's typically Josh Allen having to make things happen with his skills. And again, it's going to be hard to change that yards after catch immediately. And I think Juwan Jennings, he can come in there and fill that void. He can be a big time playmaker for them for what they're already good at, and that's Josh Allen being great with his arm strength. That's where Tutu Atwell comes to mind. He had a 1 year, $10 million prove it type of deal with the Rams this past year, and he had a monster 88-yard touchdown early on in the season, but his usage was overall limited this year. He was battling a hamstring injury. Those can be incredibly nagging. So his market value might be lowered a tad bit just because he didn't have a impactful 2025 season altogether. But in the first 3 years of his career, he's pretty good. In 2023 and 24, he had 500 plus yards, combined 4 touchdowns and 83 receptions. So he was quietly proving his value slowly, and he was progressing at a pretty good rate for the Rams before this past season, where just obviously injuries took shape and what was a contract year for him. So it will be interesting to see what market he has. I definitely think this is a player a lot of people are going to look to invest in, though. A pure speed guy, someone who can stretch the field, 5'9", 165, was really proving his worth as an overall hands catcher as well. Somebody that was reliable, only 7 career drops through 4 seasons. So this is a player that, as a late-round draft pick, really emerged for the Rams. I think they would love to keep him in the building, but if he hits the open market, I think it's worth looking to pay up for him because he can do a lot for this Bills offense in terms of being able to open things up in the middle of the field, being a big time playmaker downfield as well. This is a quarterback now who has a cannon, of course, and just does not have the weapons to really utilize that to full strength at times without having explosive guys who can make plays downfield and create for this offense. You can certainly use them in short yardage areas as well when it comes to bubble screens and whatnot. But Tutu Atwell would make a whole lot of sense for this offense. Can stretch the field, bolstering this core. It's very important this offseason. So if you can add a guy like Jennings, who's a strong physical pass catcher, and or Atwell, who can do a lot of things regarding his speed to help downfield, then one of those things needs to happen for this offense. And if they can somehow do both of them, that would be great for this offense, and it'd be really hard to defend them in the pass game. Last thing the Bills need to accomplish this offseason, re-signing Connor McGovern at center. Likely going to be one of the higher paid interior linemen in the NFL. He's been rock solid since moving to center, not allowing sacks in each of the last 2 seasons. He was the starting left guard for Buffalo 2023, moved to center this past year, and that move by Sean McDermott ended up being a great one, as it allowed him to really establish a better foundation as a run blocker. He's really improved in that area. And again, he's not allowed a sack in 2 years. It's hard to find quality centers in this league that can do a lot for you in terms of dictating things when it comes to communication, having the physicality to withstand strong nose tackles and blitzes in this league, and not allowing any sacks is great. One of the best pass blockers the past 2 seasons at his position. It's going to allow him to command about $16 to $18 million a year. That's what you're going to pay for a top flight center. Is it possible that he walks? I think so, but you definitely want to keep this core of the offensive line together. And I think that'd be the best news for the Bills. But again, they're not sitting here with a whole lot of money. So if they're going to be losing a guy, it's going to be McGovern, unfortunately. But I think it's something they need to accomplish this year. Sign him on the dot and keep this group together up front because they did have one of the top run games in the NFL. And he's a big reason for that. And, just keeping Josh Allen happy is one thing they can do. So even if they got to spend up to re-sign somebody there, that's probably a better idea than trying to go out there and find some guys on the defense when it comes to helping out this run defense. They'll just have to do that through the draft. So I think McGovern's got to be a top priority for the Bills. So for today's episode, just like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.